Picture this scenario. You're scrolling through social media, watching people your age buying luxury cars, taking expensive vacations, and seemingly living their best financial lives. Meanwhile, you're calculating whether you can afford both groceries and gas this week. The gap between where you are and that magical seven-figure milestone feels wider than the Grand Canyon. But here's something that might surprise you about millionaires that nobody talks about. Most of them didn't earn their second million by grinding for another decade. They earned it in about 3 years. The third million? Even faster. And the fourth? Well, that's where things get downright ridiculous. My name is Nick, and I help people understand how money actually works in the real world, not the fantasy version we see on Instagram. If you want to discover why becoming a millionaire might be easier than you think once you crack the code, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if this information changes how you think about wealth building. Let's start with a question that probably keeps you up at night. Why does accumulating your first $1 million feel like trying to fill a swimming pool with a teaspoon? The answer isn't what most financial gurus will tell you. It's not because you need to eat ramen noodles for 20 years or because you're not hustling hard enough. The real reason is that building your first million requires you to fundamentally rewire your brain's relationship with money, and that process takes time. Think about it like learning to drive. When you first get behind the wheel, you're consciously thinking about every single action. Check mirrors, signal, brake gently, don't hit that mailbox. Your brain is working overtime just to perform basic functions. But after years of driving, you can navigate across town while having a conversation, drinking coffee, and mentally planning your grocery list. The skills have become automatic. The same thing happens with money management, except the stakes are much higher and the learning curve is much steeper. Most people spend the first portion of their wealth building journey making expensive mistakes. They panic sell during market downturns, chase hot investment trends, or blow their emergency fund on something that seemed important at the time. These aren't character flaws, they're tuition payments in the University of Financial Education. Here's where things get interesting. Once you develop what I call money muscle memory, everything changes. You instinctively know when a financial decision makes sense and when it doesn't. You can spot a bad investment from a mile away. You automatically redirect money toward wealth building instead of consumption. These skills don't just help you reach your first million, they accelerate every million that comes after. But there's another factor at play that nobody wants to admit. When you're starting with nothing, fear is your constant companion. Every investment feels like you're betting your entire future on a coin flip. What if the stock market crashes the day after you invest? What if that real estate deal turns into a money pit? What if you need that money for an emergency? This fear isn't irrational, it's actually quite logical. When you only have $5,000 saved, losing half of it in a market downturn means months or even years of progress down the drain. You can't afford to take the same risks that someone with $500,000 can take. So you play it safe, which often means earning lower returns, which means it takes longer to build wealth, which means you stay afraid longer. And it's a cycle that keeps most people stuck. Now contrast that with someone who already has $1 million in their portfolio. If the market drops 30%, they're certainly not happy about it, but they're not losing sleep either. They've seen market crashes before, and they've watched their portfolios recover and reach new highs. More importantly, they have enough cushion to weather virtually any financial storm. This psychological safety net allows them to make more aggressive investment choices that can accelerate their wealth building. But here's the part that really separates millionaires from everyone else. They understand something about debt that most people get completely backward. While the average person is drowning in car payments, credit card balances, and student loans, millionaires have either eliminated their bad debt entirely or they're using debt strategically to build more wealth. Let me explain the difference. Bad debt is money you borrow to buy things that lose value over time. That $70,000 truck that you'll be paying off for 7 years, bad debt, the credit card balance from that vacation you took last summer, bad debt. And these payments are like having a hole in your financial bucket. No matter how much money you pour in, it keeps leaking out. Good debt, on the other hand, is money you borrow to buy assets that make you more money. A rental property that generates positive cash flow, good debt. A business loan that allows you to expand and increase profits, good debt. Millionaires have mastered the art of using other people's money to build their own wealth. Here's something that might shock you. By the time most people reach their first million, they're not just debt-free, they're actually creditors. They're the ones earning interest instead of paying it. Banks are competing to lend them money because they represent low-risk, high-value customers. This access to capital creates opportunities that simply don't exist for people with poor credit and no assets. Imagine you find the perfect investment property. It's undervalued, in a great location, and could generate substantial rental income. If you're wealthy, you can move quickly. You have the down payment ready, your credit score opens doors to favorable loan terms, and your existing assets provide security for the lender. You can close the deal and start earning returns immediately. Now imagine you're that same person 5 years ago before you built wealth. You might recognize the same great opportunity, but you can't act on it. You don't have the down payment, your credit isn't strong enough for favorable loan terms, and you lack the assets to secure financing. The opportunity passes to someone who is prepared to seize it. This is why wealth compounds exponentially rather than linearly. It's not just that rich people have more money to invest, it's that they have access to better investment opportunities, better terms, and better information. They can take calculated risks that create massive returns because they have the financial foundation to support those risks. But perhaps the most important factor in why subsequent millions come faster is something that happens automatically once your portfolio reaches a certain size. It's like your money starts earning more money than you could ever save from your job. Think about this mathematically. If you're earning $50,000 per year and managing to save 10% of that, you're adding $5,000 annually to your investments. That's impressive discipline, but it's still a relatively small amount. Now imagine you have $1 million investment portfolio earning a modest 8% return. That portfolio generates $80,000 in growth in a single year without you lifting a finger. That's more than your entire salary, and it's more than 15 times what you were able to save through your own efforts. This is the point where wealth building shifts from being primarily about your contributions to being primarily about compound growth. Your money is working harder for you than you ever worked for it. And since that growth is happening on an increasingly larger base amount, the absolute dollar gains become staggering. Let me put this in perspective with some numbers that will probably make your head spin. Starting from $1 million and earning that same 8% return, you'll have $2 million in about 9 years. But here's where it gets wild. The next million takes just 6 years, the third million, 4 years. By the time you reach your fourth million, each additional million is arriving every 3 years or so. Your money has become a wealth-generating machine that operates on autopilot, churning out more cash annually than most people see in their entire careers. But, wait, there's more. And no, I'm not selling you a set of steak knives. I'm talking about something far more valuable. The psychological transformation that happens when you cross that first $1 million threshold. Suddenly you stop thinking like someone who's trying to build wealth and start thinking like someone who already has it. This shift in mindset is absolutely crucial, and it affects every financial decision you make going forward. When you're worth $50,000, you think about money in terms of monthly budgets and annual goals. When you're worth $1 million, you start thinking in terms of decades and generations. You're no longer asking yourself whether you can afford something. You're asking whether that purchase aligns with your long-term wealth strategy. It's like upgrading from playing checkers to playing chess. Here's something most people don't realize about millionaires. They didn't become wealthy by accident, and they certainly didn't become wealthy by following the conventional wisdom that keeps everyone else broke. While the average person is busy financing depreciating assets and treating their paycheck like a permission slip to spend money, millionaires are systematically acquiring assets that put money in their pockets every month. Let me give you a perfect example. Most people see a car as transportation. Millionaires see a car as a liability that costs money every month in payments, insurance, maintenance, and depreciation. So while everyone else is comparing interest rates on car loans, millionaires are comparing cash flow projections on rental properties. While others are debating whether to lease or finance, millionaires are calculating capitalization rates and internal rates of return. This different way of thinking about money extends to everything they do. When a millionaire looks at their monthly expenses, they're not just trying to minimize costs. They're looking for ways to turn expenses into tax deductions. That home office, tax deduction, that business lunch, tax deduction, that continuing education course, tax deduction. They've learned to play by a different set of rules, and those rules heavily favor people who understand them. The tax advantages alone can accelerate wealth building in ways that most people never consider. While the average person is paying taxes on every dollar they earn and then trying to save what's left over, wealthy people are finding legal ways to reduce their taxable income while simultaneously building wealth. They're contributing to tax-advantaged retirement accounts, investing in real estate that provides depreciation benefits, and structuring their finances to minimize what they owe to the government. Now, I'm not suggesting you do anything illegal or unethical. I'm simply pointing out that the tax code is filled with incentives for behaviors that build wealth, and millionaires take full advantage of these incentives while most people remain completely unaware they exist. It's like playing a video game where some players know all the cheat codes and others are trying to beat the final boss with the default weapon. But here's perhaps the most important reason why subsequent millions come so much faster. Millionaires have learned to think in terms of systems rather than goals. Instead of setting a goal to save more money, they create systems that automatically divert money toward wealth building. Instead of hoping to find good investments, they create systems for identifying and evaluating opportunities. Instead of relying on willpower to avoid bad financial decisions, they create systems that make good decisions inevitable. This systematic approach eliminates most of the friction that prevents people from building wealth consistently. When your wealth building happens automatically through systems you've established, you don't have to make difficult decisions every month about whether to save money or spend it. The decision has already been made by the system you created when you had clarity and motivation. Think about it like this. Every month, you face dozens of financial decisions that could either accelerate or derail your wealth building. Should you invest that bonus or use it to upgrade your lifestyle? Should you take advantage of that investment opportunity or play it safe? Should you pay off debt or build your emergency fund? These decisions require mental energy, and most people make them inconsistently based on their mood, recent experiences, or whatever financial advice they happen to read that week. Millionaires have eliminated most of these decisions by creating systems that handle them automatically. Their investment contributions happen before they even see their paycheck. Their emergency fund is automatically replenished if they ever need to use it. Their investment criteria are clearly defined so they can quickly evaluate opportunities without second-guessing themselves. This systematic approach also protects them from their own emotions, which is crucial because emotions are the enemy of wealth building. Fear causes people to sell investments at the worst possible time. Greed causes them to chase hot trends and ignore diversification. Overconfidence leads to taking unnecessary risks with money they can't afford to lose. By relying on systems instead of emotions, millionaires avoid most of the costly mistakes that keep everyone else from building wealth effectively. Here's something that might surprise you about the math behind compound growth. The difference between earning 8% annually and 10% annually might not sound like much, but over long periods, it's absolutely staggering. On a $1 million portfolio, that 2% difference means an extra $20,000 in growth every single year. Over a decade, that small difference in return compounds into hundreds of thousands of additional dollars. This is why millionaires become obsessed with optimizing their investment returns. They're not just trying to beat the market for bragging rights. They understand that small improvements in returns create massive differences in outcomes when you're dealing with large amounts of money over long periods. A 2% improvement in returns can literally be worth millions of dollars over a lifetime. And here's the kicker that really explains why the first million is so much harder than the rest. When you're starting out, you're fighting against time, inflation, and your own spending habits. Every dollar you manage to save and invest is precious because you don't have many of them. But once you cross that $1 million threshold, time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Inflation becomes less relevant because your returns far exceed the rate of inflation. And your spending habits matter less because your investment growth dwarfs your contributions. It's like reaching that point in a video game where you finally unlock the cheat codes, except these cheat codes are completely legal, and the IRS actually encourages you to use them. But let's talk about something that separates millionaires from people who just dream about becoming millionaires. Like, they've developed what I call financial pattern recognition. You know how experienced doctors can diagnose certain conditions just by walking into a room? They've seen thousands of patients, and their brains automatically recognize patterns that would be invisible to someone without that experience. Millionaires have developed the same ability with money. They can spot a bad investment opportunity from across the room. They instinctively know when someone is trying to sell them something they don't need. They can evaluate whether a business opportunity makes sense in about 30 seconds, while the rest of us would need spreadsheets, consultants, and probably a crystal ball to reach the same conclusion. This pattern recognition comes from making mistakes, learning from them, and accumulating years of experience watching their money grow and occasionally shrink. By the time they reach their first million, they've essentially earned a PhD in practical finance. And unlike academic knowledge, this is the kind of wisdom that directly translates into making more money. Here's where things get almost comically unfair. Remember how I mentioned that millionaires have access to better investment opportunities? Well, it turns out that some of the best investments aren't even available to regular people. I'm talking about private equity deals, hedge funds, and investment opportunities that require minimum investments of $100,000 or more. It's like being told you can only shop at the discount store until you prove you have enough money to afford the premium store. Except in this case, the premium store has better products that actually cost less per unit. The rich literally get richer because they have access to investments that generate higher returns with lower fees. If that doesn't make you want to shake your fist at the universe, I don't know what will. But here's something that might make you feel better. The most important factor in building wealth isn't having access to exclusive investments or secret knowledge. It's simply getting started and staying consistent. The person who starts investing $300 a month at age 25 will likely end up wealthier than someone who starts investing $1,000 a month at age 45. Time is the most valuable ingredient in the wealth building recipe, and it's the one thing that money can't buy. This is why I get frustrated when I see people spending years researching the perfect investment strategy or waiting for the ideal market conditions to start building wealth. They're optimizing for the wrong variable. Instead of trying to find the perfect investment, they should be focusing on consistently investing in good enough investments for as long as possible. Let me share something that will probably blow your mind about the power of compound growth on large amounts of money. Once your portfolio reaches $2 million and you're earning that 8% annual return, you're generating $160,000 in growth every year. That's more than the median household income in America, and it's happening without you doing any work whatsoever. At $3 million, your money is earning $240,000 annually. At $4 million, it's nearly $320,000. Your money is literally earning more money than most people will see in their entire careers, and it's doing this every single year, year after year, forever. This is the point where wealthy people often experience what I call financial vertigo. The numbers become so large that they stop feeling real. When your investment account grows by $50,000 in a single month because the market had a good run, it's hard to get excited about finding a $20 bill in your coat pocket But here's what's really wild about this process. Like the psychological shift that happens when you cross these major milestones is almost as important as the financial shift. When you have $1 million, you stop thinking like someone who needs money and start thinking like someone who has options. When you have multiple millions, you start thinking like someone whose biggest challenge isn't making money, but figuring out what to do with all the money you're making. So there you have it. The first million is brutal because you're essentially paying tuition to learn how money actually works while fighting against your own psychology and limited resources. But once you've earned that financial PhD and compound interest starts doing the heavy lifting, subsequent millions practically fall into your lap. Now stop scrolling through social media, comparing yourself to others, and start building systems that will make your future self disgustingly wealthy.